We had read some background about the radical phase of the revolution. Robespierre is the pivotal figure here. At the top of the ninth, we've got the dates. Let's kind of highlight that 1792 to 1795. And what we're going to talk about is kind of a flow chart of the outlook and the goals of the radical phase of the revolution. And we're going to spell that out in a flow chart. So use pages like maybe 10, 11, wherever you have some space there where we can kind of talk through this dynamic here. And you can kind of spell that out and kind of put some of that in your own words. Make some space to put some of that in your own words. So the radical phase of the revolution under Robespierre, they're setting up what they describe as a republic of virtue. And that term wasn't used in the background reading, but they were talking a lot about virtue. A virtue means like good conduct, good character, good morals, etc. All right, so they want to create a society of good conduct. Now, this word republic means a representative democracy. You live in the American Republic. They're not setting up a democracy. They're setting up what's described as an oligarchy. This is organized under a government called the Committee on Public Safety, of which Robespierre was one of the leaders. But an oligarchy, I meant to define it down here, but you can just write it down here. An oligarchy is a dictatorship by a small group of people. So what they're doing is setting up this dictatorship, an oligarchy called the Committee on Public Safety that's run by a small group of people. And what they want to do is create a republic, a society of good conduct, good people, good morals, etc. So what they're going to do is create a totally non-traditional society. They're going to create an entirely new society, culture, outlook, etc. Some of the hallmarks of this are going to be their use of terror, which they believe should be a permanent part of human society, to intimidate and terrorize people into acting the way they should act according to the leaders of the radical phase of the revolution. They're going to try to stamp Christianity out of the society altogether and just create an entirely new basis of human society. They believed they could transform humanity. This is through Lockean means. If you put people in an entirely new society, culture, outlook, etc., then you're going to get a different type of person according to Locke's blank slate. So their means are totally Lockean. Now their goals are totally out of Rousseau, and we'll talk about that more in a second. Their goals are not individual rights and individual freedoms and natural rights, and the government protects people's natural rights. Those aren't their goals at all. All those would be Lockean goals. Their goals are completely out of Rousseau. But their means are Lockean. They believe if they put people in an entirely new society, they'll get an entirely different type of person. They believe this is like a vision of social engineering. They believe they could engineer, that they could purposely, intentionally shape and transform humanity to what they saw as the fulfillment of virtue. And this is where we were talking about those quotes on pages like 9 and 10 from Robespierre. And he's saying, like, we're going to swap out these characteristics for those characteristics. And he has this like laundry list on pages 9 and 10 of different characteristics that they want to move away from and they want to replace with better human characteristics. This is their belief that they can transform humanity to the fulfillment of humanity's potential. Their primary definitions of virtue, which means good moral and good conduct, the type of people they wanted to produce are people who give themselves over to the group, as opposed to those who follow self-interest. They want selfless, group-interested people who give themselves over to the nation. One of the key quotes, certainly not the only one, but one of the key quotes is the soul of, this is on page 10, the soul of the republic is virtue, love of country, the generous devotion that fuses all interests into the general interest. And there you see this notion of commitment to the group as opposed to the self. There you see a definition essentially of the general will, this fusing and giving yourself over to the group. And that very last quote on page 10, the principal concern of constitutional government is civil liberty. That of revolutionary government is public liberty. And this is what we talked about in terms of two different definitions of liberty. That civil liberty, that's Locke, your civil liberties and rights. He said that's the concern of constitutional government. But we're not a constitutional government. This isn't a shared sovereignty arrangement. This is an oligarchy. That of revolutionary government is public liberty, what they described as the greater liberation of giving yourself over to the group, fusing yourself into the will and spirit of the group about what's right and what's good and what's true. And in doing so, you create this perfect equality. Everyone's contributed to the general will, and it's to be obeyed. So this government is seeking to create kind of this Rousseauian person who's group interested. What we described, and you should jot down probably here as well, as a collectivist. As opposed to an individualist, they believe a collectivist is the primary definition of a virtuous person, somebody with good characters and morals. Okay, let's take a look at page 11 then. And this is the Oath of the Horatii. And this is described historically as a perfect representation of the outlook of the radical phase of the revolution. Now, note at the top of page 11, this is painted by Jacques-Louis David in 1784. That is 5 years before the revolution even starts. It is 8 years before the radical phase of the revolution comes about. But yet it's said that David kind of nails the essence of the radical phase of the revolution that's yet to come. Let's talk through what's going on because this is a fairly complex scene. This is from a mythological story out of Rome. David is painting in a neoclassical style that goes back to Rome. He is depicting a mythological scene in which the city-state of Rome is in a war with a competing city-state in the Italian peninsula called Alba Longa. And the war's been dragging on, so these two city-states decide to settle this war once and for all in a duel. And what they're going to have is they're going to have 3 sets of brothers from Rome called the Horatii, and they're going to duel with a competing set of 3 brothers from Alba Longa, and confusingly enough, the family of brothers in Alba Longa is called the Horatii. So it's going to be the Horatii of Rome, who's depicted here, versus the Horatii of Alba Longa. And those 3 brothers on each side of the Horatii versus the Horatii are going to fight each other to the death to determine who wins Alba Longa versus Rome. So here's the Horatii of Rome, and these 3 brothers here are swearing an oath that they're going to go out there and they're going to do their utmost to kill those brothers, the Horatii brothers of Alba Longa, or die trying. The complexity of the scene is this woman right here, she is married to one of these 3 brothers. So this is her husband and her brothers-in-law. But her maiden name is Horatii, and she's from Alba Longa. So her husband and her brothers-in-law here are swearing an oath that they're going to go out there and do their utmost to kill all of her brothers. And this woman right here, these are her brothers. She's a Horatii from Rome, but she is engaged to a Horatii from Alba Longa. So her brothers are swearing an oath that they're going to do their utmost to go kill her fiancé or die trying. So you have this real complex scene, and when you relate this back to the flow chart here, what you're talking about is it relates to the radical phase of the revolution as these individuals here, they're completely committed to the will of the group. The will of the group, the collective spirit, the general will of Rome at this time is you need to go out there and kill those Horatii brothers from Alba Longa. So these are completely group interested individuals, right? They're totally in on the will of the group in terms of group interest. They are completely self-sacrificing because they're willing to sacrifice their own lives, but also they're putting the group's considerations, the considerations of Rome being the group in this case, they're putting the considerations of the group above their immediate family interest, right? Like the family dynamic is just going to be rent. It's going to be torn apart one way or the other. The Horatii brothers could kill all the Horatii brothers, or the Horatii brothers could kill all the Horatii brothers, or like one set of 3 is going to die, but you only might have 1 left standing out of the 6 total combatants, etc. one way or the other, this family dynamic is going to be permanently altered. But the point is, this is the type of person that the radical phase of the revolution wanted and believed they could produce. They believe this is the type of person who is the highest fulfillment of human potential possible because they're completely selfless. They're totally in on the group. They're completely group interested, and they give themselves over and they fuse and merge themselves into the will of the group. This is the greatest liberation a human being can experience, is this public liberty of giving yourself over to the will of the group. So this is this kind of like Rousseauian individual that the radical phase of the revolution seeks to produce.